Hi, everyone. We are happy to have you join us for today's event, Transitioning Back After the Pandemic, featuring Lauren Stern, licensed professional clinical counselor and a class of 2014 graduate from USD School of Education and Leadership Studies. My name is Megan O'Rourke, and I'm the Associate Director of Regional Programs for the Office of Alumni Relations at USD. The mission of the Alumni Association is to engage and enrich the Torero community for life. Today's session was created with the desire to provide programming that is of the greatest need to our alumni, while supplying resources to better their lives as well. At this time, I would like to introduce today's featured speaker, Lauren Stern. Lauren is a licensed professional clinical counselor and a national certified counselor and owner of Tranquility Counseling. She works with youth, adolescents, and adults and provides therapy to individuals, couples, and families. She specializes in depression, anxiety, mood and personality disorders, trauma, relationship concerns, sexuality, personal development, life transitions, stress management. I mean, you can see how well versed she is in everything you could possibly need. But the last but not least is the mindfulness-based practices of yoga therapy and meditation. Her goal is to make meaningful changes that will help you achieve a healthier sense of well-being, balance, and happiness to your life. So go ahead, Lauren, take it away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome and thank you for being here. I appreciate your time and efforts to join. Today, we're going to be going over the tips and the tools that will help us in transitioning back after the pandemic. So here we have the questions that were submitted during the registration by you, the audience. Go ahead and take just a moment to briefly review this. And then at the end, if I didn't get a chance to answer these questions, we can go back to these and circle around. And if we have time, go ahead and answer them at the end.
Hey, Lauren, friendly reminder to share your screen.
Oh, that's helpful. One moment here. Hopefully everyone can see me now. Is that being shared?
Yeah, yep, from start, perfect.
Okay, wonderful. So here's the questions. If you didn't see that, thank you for that. Appreciate it, Megan. So these are the questions again that you submitted during registration. We'll try to answer these if we have time. So I'm going to start with some of the trends that I've noticed as a therapist, as a friend, as a colleague, as a partner in life that I've really noticed that happen throughout the pandemic over the last 1.5 years, I guess we're coming up on now. This is what a lot of people would come into session with me and my clients would speak about. So we have a lot here. We've got mental health issues that were on the rise, such as depression. We had anxiety, stressors, and relationship concerns. I'm sure that you felt lonely at times and isolated due to the quarantine times, and that also made boredom come about due to the lack of social interaction between us and others. Another big one was the loss of routine or structure that you might have had in your day or your week. That kind of was swiped away from us, and we didn't really know what to do with all that. Other things are changes in our eating habits, physical activity, and sleeping patterns. We also blurred the lines between work, school, and our household domestic lives. They all kind of became enmeshed and became one. And that also made us feel as though we had to try to reclaim much needed me time or you time. And I'm not sure if you've ever heard of this saying, but it's called bedtime procrastination. This is something that a lot of people came to me and talked about. It's where you continue to stay up later and later and later throughout the evening, even though you're exhausted and wiped out, because you have this sense and desire to gain some personal freedom and independence. And so that drives you to stay awake, even though you know you shouldn't, and you have a big day the next day. And then you can imagine if you're staying awake and you're exhausted, you're going to have lower productivity levels. You also have distractions, animals, people, kids coming into your Zoom calls or what have you. So lots of disruptions came about. If there wasn't low productivity, then there was the opposite. People were overworking. They were going into the wee late hours of the night, which then created burnout and fatigue. We also had job loss, of course, financial instability. People made career transitions. And then another one was, where do I put my energy? Where can I find value and meaning? And how can I create and build that? now that things have gone south and I don't maybe have a job anymore, or my kids are now at home and I'm wearing the hat of being a school teacher and a mom and a full-time employee. So people started to kind of rebuild themselves. And this was actually helpful in some ways because it asked them to reflect on what they do find important in their life. There was a couple other trends that I saw throughout the pandemic. So a lot of us unfortunately resorted back to not so healthy coping skills. It's just kind of what we did. Some of us did the increase in alcohol or other substances. Others basically spent all day on screen time. And as I looked it up, the stats were saying that it was actually up 21% prior to the pandemic as using our social media outlets. Another thing is we were staying at home all day long. We had to, it was the law. And so we became kind of enmeshed with our family members, and in some ways, codependent habits started coming about. That also then created separation anxiety now that we're going back into the world. And then last but not least, this is the major one that I'm seeing every single day in my practice all day long, is social anxiety. Re-entering social settings with crowds, small or big, it can feel really overwhelming. It can make us very anxious and nervous and feel really scary, even though some of us might feel really excited too, with the travelings that we can do and going to restaurants and maybe even going back to the office. There still is some nerves around having conversations with others besides just our family members or our tight-knit circle of people. So we'll go over some tips and tools for that as well later. So let's move on. What I wanted to do was provide you with the trends and why people were coming to see me as a therapist, and then the strategies that I gave them to improve their coping skills. So a type of therapy that's really well known is called cognitive behavioral therapy. It's CBT, and it's one of the most popular therapeutic modalities out there. It's also known to help depression, PTSD, anxiety the most out of anything else out there as well. So what CBT does is it's designed to help us look at our thoughts, look at our feelings and our behaviors, and see how they ultimately all affect one another. So what I'm going to do in just a little bit is I'm going to take you through what's called a thought log. It's a CBT worksheet that I actually provide for my clients in session, and it helps them think about their thinking. It's a basic cognitive tool, and it's a series of questions that leads them step by step to be able to identify their negative thinking and then adjust that negative thinking by catching it, checking the facts and the evidence for that negative thinking, and then hopefully changing it by altering it into a new thought that's more healthy and productive for them. So let's look at how this works. CBT, the best way to describe it is looking at the CBT triangle. As mentioned before, we have our thoughts at the top, what we think, that's our thoughts, and how we think affects how we feel. So you move to the left side, the lower bottom half, that's our emotions and our feelings. What we feel affects how we think and what we do. So then you move over to the bottom right, and that's our behaviors, our actions. And this then affects what we think back at the top and how we feel back at the bottom left. So as you can see, they're all interrelated. It's important to look at how they're all interrelated because we need to monitor the patterns that we're having with our thinking and then reframe the thoughts. So I want you to even just begin to think about your own patterns of thinking and pay attention to these what if thinking patterns that really fuel our anxiety and our panic. A lot of us don't know this stat, but the mind ends up wandering about 49.9% of the time, either in the past where we're ruminating on regrets and sorrows and whatnot, or it's stuck in the future where we're projecting and drawing conclusions that may not even happen. So keeping things in perspective and training your brain to return to the middle, the present moment where we are here and where we are now is much more helpful and healthy. So what I'm going to do for you again is I'm going to show you how to become aware of our thoughts, how to write them down in a certain way. And then we're going to refer to the thought log on how to question your thoughts, how to justify the facts, how to look at if this is beneficial or not, is this effective or not. And then we're going to look at alternative explanations and how to rewrite and reframe our thinking styles. So let's take this for an example. We have a thought record, and this is exactly what I do with my clients in session. I give them a blank version of this, and I will actually have a blank version for you. So you'll have your own copy. And so that if this is a coping skill you can see yourself working with, then you can do on your own time as well. So here's what it looks like. You've got your situation. This is usually a triggering event that occurs. So you'll have who, what, when, and where. So we'll call this example this guy named Joe. Joe, on a Monday, July 27th at 7 p.m., he got in an argument with his father. He was told that he should look for a job and that he's being lazy. That's the situation and the activating event that caused Joe to feel a certain way. So the way that he felt, as you can imagine, was anxious. He felt angry, he felt irritable, and he felt sad. What you do next after you label your emotions and your feelings is then you rate each of these from 0 to 100. So Joe here clearly felt 60% anxious, 80% angry, 80% irritable, and 90% sad. After you've looked at the situation, you've looked at your feelings, then you look at the automatic negative thoughts that typically aren't very rational or, again, helpful and not accurate. So you look at these automatic thoughts such as, he hates me, I can never find a job, he'll stop supporting me financially, he thinks I'm stupid, I'll never be successful. Then we take a look at the evidence that really supports what we call this hot thought. And again, the hot thought is these automatic negative thoughts. So what is the evidence for all these automatic negative thoughts? Well, he hasn't been employed in 6 months. Okay. I don't know if that means that he's stupid or won't ever be successful or anything of that nature, but he hasn't been employed for 6 months. So perhaps he's feeling that way. He has applied for 3 jobs and has not heard back. He got laid off from a previous job because he thinks, an automatic thought is, he believes they didn't like him. So we look at the evidence that does not support the hot thought. That's what we do second to last. So you say something like, okay, now that I'm reflecting on this, in my previous job that I had for 7 years, by the way, I didn't get fired. I also got a promotion and I typically got good feedback. So you can see that he's going and countering against the evidence before his hot thought. Now, lastly, you look at how you can change your thought and come up with a better thought. So perhaps it can be something like, because of my experience that I've had and because I've had such good exposure, if I continue to apply, I'll get more interviews and perhaps I'll land myself a job. So this is just one example of one coping skill or strategy that you can use that has to do with CBT, using cognitive, our thoughts, behavior, our behavior, and therapy all as one. Let's move on. Other strategies for coping is looking at a therapy titled dialectical behavioral therapy, also known as DBT. The goal of DBT is to keep your emotions under control and to help you tolerate any distress or negative emotions that's causing you to have problems. A big way that we can do this is by looking into mindfulness practices. That's actually my specialty, as mentioned before by Megan. Mindfulness practices is coming into the moment and finding a connection between your mind and your body and learning how to ground yourself by using relaxation skills. So something I do with my clients almost always at the beginning of a session, or sometimes at the end of the session, just depending, is we do a deep breathing exercise. We do a deep breathing exercise, or we do a body scan, which is where you progressively go through each muscle in your body and tense it and then relax it. It's a form of meditation. Sometimes we even do yoga, and there's all other sorts of mindfulness visualizations and other activities that we do as a way to get in touch with our body and to get away from our minds for once and for all. I can teach you a very quick square method breathing that I think is one of the most simple techniques I've ever used. And it's just easy to teach, and you can do it wherever you are and whenever. So what that looks like is, imagine in your head a square. You literally have a square right here that you've drawn. What you do is you increase your breathing and inhale going up one part of the square. So you go inhale for 1, 2, 3, 4. You hold at the top corner and draw a line across in your head for 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold again at the top right for 1, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, releasing any tension. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then so forth and so on. And you do this so that you can regulate your breath, and so that you can come back to your breath and it increases oxygen to your brain and blood flow throughout your body, all helping you calm down and all helping your nervous system. There's other ones to teach you as well, but that's my favorite. Let's look at some behavioral exercises. So something that I've asked a lot of my clients when they were in the midst of all this is, what are new routines that you may have picked up during the pandemic? What routines do you plan to continue to use in your daily life? What new healthy habits have you created? The thing is, what's so important when we go back and transition after this time is that we keep doing these things that we started during the lockdown. This way you can maintain some normalcy. So things are changing and they're changing quickly now. And you want to have a sense of normalcy, like I was saying. And so while things change, if you can continue to do habits, things that you've picked up and you're doing every day, that helps you not only feel that normalcy, but it also helps you feel that sense of achievement and productivity level. So again, if you've started to create art, cook, bake, I saw so many breads out there that were incredible. Couldn't do it. But if you decided to do the baking thing, that's amazing. If you picked up reading as a hobby, writing, journaling, learning a new skill set, such as a language or picking up a new music instrument, any of the above, working out at home, yoga, meditating, whatever it may be, just keep at it and keep doing it. Something that I'm going to show you next is how you can do what's called a behavioral activity log. I'm going to swipe back in just a second. This is where you make a list of activities that you enjoy and find pleasure in, and then you make up a list of activities that isn't so pleasurable for you. Then you also, on top of that, to feel that productivity, right, and that sense of achievement, you can list activities that you feel you need to take care of, so responsibilities. And then I think what's really important is rating the level of accomplishment or rating your mood pre doing that activity and then post doing that activity so that you can observe how you feel. So a small example of this is the behavior activity log. This is what you would do in one column: activities that made you feel good, cooking dinner for myself, having lunch with a friend, whether that be on Zoom or now in person, going for a walk at the lake or at the beach. Now, what you would do next to that isn't here that I would recommend is, after you have done that, or rather before you've cooked your meal or had lunch or gone for a walk, remember rating. How's my mood right now? How am I feeling in my body, in my mind, and in general? Then you do the activity, and then you again rate it. How did that increase your mood? How did that have an effect on your thoughts, your feelings? Then you look at the activities that aren't making you feel so good, that maybe are making you feel depressed or anxious or more distressed, such as sitting at home and thinking about your problems, lying in bed all morning, binging on Netflix, even though we all need that here and there, or worrying about where your life is headed or not headed. So I'm going to briefly go over this. This is another strategy similar to what I had just spoke about with the behavioral log and the activity log, but it's in more detail. And what you can do is you can basically snap a screenshot of this if you'd like. And this is an acronym, and the acronym is ACCEPTS. And this is a dialectical behavioral skill that's here for you to emotionally regulate and decrease any negative thoughts. So it's basically a detailed version of what we've already spoken about. So just look over what this looks like and ask yourself how you can begin to do some of these things, whether that's engaging in the positive activities, whether that's contributing by volunteering. I have so many clients that had been furloughed and they didn't know what to do with their time, and they still don't have a job. And they're like, what do I do with all this time? And they're now people who are working at animal shelters, food banks, a couple times per week, and giving back to the community has been so helpful and beneficial for their mood and has been such a reward for them. And it's been really wonderful to see. Other things you can do is look at comparing where you are now and how you had the strength and resilience to get through this period, this crisis of your life, and how you've also been able to get through others that may have felt worse for you at times. You then also can look at your emotions. We've talked about that. You can look at pushing away, which is basically just taking your problem and not avoiding it by any means, but it's putting it up on a shelf and saying, hey, I see you, I feel you. I will continue with life, but I will deal with you when I need to. And right now is not the time. I'm at work. Right now is not the time. I'm giving my kid a bath. So you don't avoid the problem. You just tuck it away or put it up on a shelf until you have more energy for it. And then so forth with the thoughts, engaging in your thoughts. And then I love the last one, which is a mindfulness skill. It's using your 5 senses. And I like to do this while I take a walk to really, really ground yourself. So again, mindfulness here. How are you becoming present and aware of the moment? So walk outside and begin to engage all your senses. In other words, let's start with what we see: the blue sky above us, the sunshine. We also see the green grass. Maybe we're at a park at Balboa. What is it that we see? Then open up your ears, another sense that we have. What do you hear? Maybe you hear people laughing in the park. Maybe you hear birds chirping. That brings a sense of calm. Maybe you hear the ocean waves because you're taking that walk that you wanted to take along the beach. So you ask yourself what you see, what you hear, what you feel, maybe the sunshine on your head, maybe the cool breeze in the air. And you just take yourself through a series. And as you do this, you're calming again, you're calming down your nervous system again and bringing yourself to the present moment. Now, there's another type of therapy modality that I've used that's called acceptance and commitment therapy, also known as ACT. Now, ACT adopts a view where you're taking a look at each of your behaviors and you're looking at ways to accept whatever the experience you're going through is. In this case, it was the pandemic. So what you want to do, the aim is to eventually change your attitude and your emotional state by not suppressing, again, not avoiding, not denying the feelings that are coming up, and ultimately just taking any distress that you have and almost inviting it in and saying, once again, I accept you. There's some deep feelings coming up for me right now. I feel it in my body, and the appropriate responses that I'm having to this situation, they're here, but I'm not going to let them prevent me from moving forward in my life. So as we look into this deeper, we ask ourselves, how can we make a commitment to new behaviors and new changes in our life? And how can we look at our personal values and our goals and begin to implement new changed ways to get those goals accomplished? So we've talked about creating lists. One fun activity, actually now two, that have been implemented with my clients to look at the things that they may have value then pre-pandemic and now post-pandemic, and the meaning of life that they have now, is looking at how they created a quarantine bucket list. That's what I did with a lot of my clients. All the things, they named all the things that they basically had time for now that they were at home all the time. And they created that list. And that's kind of how they were able to look at the silver lining throughout all this and change that attitude that they had while they were experiencing a crisis, an emergency. Then most recently, I've asked a lot of those same clients to make what's called, I've labeled a post-pandemic bucket list. And that's a list of things that you can do again, you can do safely again out in the community or whatever have you. So those are fun experiences. And again, the whole mind frame here with ACT is when you have these stress-related thoughts about COVID or about transitioning back after the pandemic, you can say to yourself, oh, hello, thoughts. I see you. Come on in. I invite you. You can come here and stay with me today, but I will not let you dictate what my life looks like, what my day looks like, how I feel about the world. I will still remain encouraged and hopeful and empowered. So it's really a frame of mind. Now, something that's been very, very difficult for a lot of people, because it comes as a challenge for a lot, is setting boundaries, knowing what your boundaries are and knowing your limits, but then upholding and maintaining them. So you have to ask yourself questions like this. Does it make me feel anxious to be at work without everyone being vaccinated or without people wearing a mask? If it does, and get in touch with that and then speak up to your employer about how you're feeling. It's okay to be vulnerable and express your emotions. Also ask yourself, have I been increasing my social media to the point where I'm now triggered at anxiety-provoking news or the content that's there? Is it making me feel more anxious? Is it inducing more stress for me? I'm sure you already know this, but if you don't, there's apps out there that limit us and limit our screen time, and they kick you out of those apps once it's been a certain amount of time. Recommend trying those out if this is you that's spending too much social media time. Another big one that I see, again, like I've said before, every day is socially feeling exhausted. We're all so excited and so antsy to get back out there and do things, but we are feeling fatigued. We haven't been at this for a while. And so socializing can really drain us. And what you might need to do is put a cap on how many days you socialize with people or how many people you see. And then Also, ask yourself, how long should I be with these people? About what time do I start feeling a little exhausted and need me time again? You just have to know that you don't always have to say yes to everything or everyone. You can gradually go back at this, pace yourself. There's no rush. So I'm going to look at talking about your employer, or talking to your employer about going back, rather. So a lot of us may have to go back to work. We need to establish clear communication with our employers about what that looks like. So go ahead and consider, or again, take a picture of this, as this might be helpful for you as you communicate with your employer. Ask yourself and them, will we be returning in phases, or will this be all at once? What safety measures will be in place in the workplace? Will remote work be an option? Will we be able to maintain social distancing at work? And if so, what will that look like? Will you require that we get COVID testing? And if so, how often? Will we need to complete health surveys or screenings every day, temperature checks, and so forth? And again, will you be required to wear a mask? If so, is that in every area of the office? Is that just in public areas at the restroom and whatnot? Now, managers, whoever you are out there, go ahead and consider the following: having an individual one-on-one conversation with an employee to understand their needs. Every one of us are experiencing this differently. And so what someone feels comfortable doing, another person might not. So if you can, offer a hybrid work model. Understand that your employees, they're transitioning back, and it does help to be flexible and supportive with what the work environment will look like. So realize they're dealing with childcare, adjusting their schedules due to the longer commute times. And so this is all something to consider. Know your employer health benefits and make recommendations. A lot of us don't know that there's something that's titled EAP, Assistant Employee Program, Employee Assistant Program rather. And what that is, it's actually free counseling services for us, our partners, and our families. And so contact HR, get in touch with them and find out what your benefits are. Half of us don't even know that we had those. We almost all do. Then set up a mental health support group for your employees to share their feelings and stories. A lot of us feel like we've gone through something pretty traumatic here. We just want to be heard. We want to be seen and understood, and creating a group where we can go and have, our emotions, be expressed, and we can be seen and heard, can be really helpful in the healing process. And then lastly, continue to acknowledge employees and for their efforts and encourage them to take care of themselves. Now, here's for the employees out there to consider. Avoid Zoom fatigue. I know we're familiar with this. It can be very tiring, meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting. If possible, have what is called a meeting-free day. I've had so many friends and family members and clients tell me that they now have a once a week free Friday where they have no meetings at all, or free Wednesday where they have no meetings at all, and just how helpful that's been for them to help avoid the Zoom fatigue or work burnout. Also, try your best to eliminate distractions if you continue to work from home and work remotely. I mentioned animals and babies earlier and so forth. You want to try to maintain your productivity levels. So whatever you can do to eliminate those distractions, please do so mindfully and before you jump onto those Zoom calls. Also, something that I really enjoyed doing while I was working at home was lighting a good smelling candle, or turning on just a little bit of music in the background, or having essential oils to help me feel self-soothed. You can all do this as well and bring it into the workplace. If you do have to go back and you're not working remotely, go ahead and bring some of those good smelling candles into your workplace, or go ahead and plug in your headphones and listen to some good music or a podcast if you can do that simultaneously while working. And then lastly, think of innovative activities that help bond you with your team. A lot of these things were implemented during the pandemic at the workplace. So seek to continue these. People explain that they did lunch Zoom meetings, they did happy hours, they did different interactive team activities, and all of this really did help create a bond between everyone and keep that going, a sense of community, a sense of belonging. So I want to teach you this exercise that I find really important. It might be the most helpful exercise that I do with my couples and families that I work with. It really is just a framework that's structured in a way that helps you have an open dialogue for communicating effectively with either your partner or your family members. So I just title it the relationship meeting. And what you do is you would schedule this once a week to occur for about 15 minutes, nothing longer. You don't want it to feel like something you're dreading. It should be something you're actually looking forward to. So this is how it goes. There's 5 components to this. The first thing you would do is sit down with your partner and where you can be engaged and just be with them or with your family members. And you start by listing out appreciation for one another over the course of that week. So, hey babe, something I noticed that you did that I really appreciate was X, Y, and Z. Okay. The other person hears that out. They say thank you. And then they share something that I appreciate that you did was X, Y, and Z. Then you move on to the next, an outstanding chore or a task that needs to be completed that hasn't been completed yet. You take turns sharing that. Now, don't go listing 4, 5, 8, 10 things that need to be done. It can be very easy to do that, but that can cause quite a bit of stress and lead to some conflict or arguments. So just stick to the one thing that's very noticeable to you and share that and move forward. Next, plan for a good time, whether that's date night, a movie night, cooking a meal together, watching a movie, it doesn't matter. Plan for a good time ahead. We haven't had a lot of those over the past year, at least some of us haven't, and we need to implement that again. We need to have fun again, especially with our partners, our spouses, or our family members. The next one is challenges that you're either experiencing individually or that you're going through with your partner. Maybe they don't even realize that you see this as a challenge. Maybe they have no clue and they're just not aware of that. This will help them become more aware of the challenges you're going through, which then allows them to create empathy within them and compassion for you, and they can offer support to you. Same goes back for you offering it to them. And then lastly, I love this one. This one is where you take a moment and you list one success or one accomplishment that either, again, you've experienced over the past week as an individual, at the workplace, with your friendships, with your body image, whatever it may be, or as a couple, something that you've accomplished and succeeded in, or again, as a family. Closing message. For many of us, there really isn't a way of going back. And I don't even know if we should look at it as that. Should we go back and return to who we were? Perhaps the best way to move forward is to do just that, to create a new path and start getting used to the new version of us. Hopefully it's a better one in some ways. We've learned a lot, we've experienced a lot, and we've gotten through a lot. It's going to be an adjustment, just like any big change. And this is quite a major change we've gone through. But with change, we also will see the losses, mourn the losses, and grieve. And most importantly, there's new opportunities now. There's new opportunities that we will seek out and grow and be able to evolve and become better. And things will get good again, and they will happen for us again. And that's all something to look forward to. So keep that in mind. I here have some reflective questions that I've answered on my own behalf in my own time, as well as taken sessions with my clients, the whole session, to just answer some of these things and have some reflection time. So go ahead and look over them. One of them is, what's the toughest part of your transition? Now that you are going back and the pandemic is coming to a close, what have you gotten through? What has been the most positive change you've experienced? What can you view again as that silver lining that you've gone through in this pandemic? I like this one a lot. If you've had to use just 2 words to describe your new reality or the new you, what would that be? Or if you had to look at this and say, what do I want my new reality to be that it's not yet, like healthy and peaceful? How can you work to accomplish that? Having a mantra in your mind that you can come back to that helps you feel healthy, helps you feel at peace. So again, what 2 words can you describe that you want your reality to be or that it's already become? And then lastly, where can we actually come together as a whole and acknowledge what we've been through, what we would want to leave behind us, and what we would love to take with us now that we've been through this experience, this shared experience as a whole? I've provided a resource list for you, and here you have mental health apps, mental health therapy platforms, and then psychology worksheets and mindfulness exercises. So if you look at the first column on your left, it's the mental health apps. You might already be utilizing this, or you might have already heard these. These are wonderful, wonderful apps to use. There's Headspace, Calm, mind shift, a CBT thought record diary like I showed you, but on your phone, super easy to use. There's Mood Kit to rate your moods. There's Happify to increase your happiness. And then there's journaling, which has you each day for 5 minutes express gratitude for something that you feel grateful for in your life. The other platforms are zencare.co, psychologytoday.com. I'm on both of those as a therapist. What's so cool about this is you can go on and you can basically filter. I have this insurance. I want a female therapist. I want them to specialize in X, Y, and Z. And you can cater it to exactly what you need to be customized for your treatment. Other ones that do virtual therapy is Talkspace, BetterHelp, Regain, Pride Counseling for LGBTQ plus. That's one of the best ones I've ever heard was the Pride Counseling. Everyone there feels at home, they're being seen and heard. Then again, I've already mentioned, and now you know if you didn't know, the Employee Assistant Program. This is the EAP that I was talking about that most of us have if we are employed. Then on the right-hand column, we have those psychology and worksheets and mindfulness exercises that I utilize in my sessions. You can go to psychologyacademy.com. You can go to psychologytools.com, mindfulnessexercises.com, or 10% happier. Thank you so much. I appreciate everyone for being here and their time.
Great. Thank you so much, Lauren, for taking us through that. I think what was really exciting about what you shared and what we talked about when we were prepping for this meeting was the ability to actually provide people tools that they can put in their tool belt, right? And skills that they can apply and practice rather than just hearing the same, oh, it's all about open communication or it's this or it's that. So I really thank you for providing that for our attendees. While we have you, actually, though, if anyone has any questions, we have about 10 minutes left until the end of the conversation. If you have any questions and you want to throw them in the Q&A feature, please do. But Lauren, I do have a question for you, and it's about the relationship meetings. So say you want to have a relationship meeting with someone, but you don't know exactly the best way to bring it up because you're unsure of how their response is going to be. Can you talk to us about what is the recommendations on how to do so?
Yeah, that's a great question. Something that you can do with that. Can you see me, by the way? Or do you need me to share the screen again?
No, you're good.
Okay. Something that you can do that I always like to do is just say that you've read this before. You've read in an article or in the newspaper or just through any literature of reading that this was a recommendation by a therapist, by a colleague, by a friend, and that you wanted to try it because you thought this would be a really nice idea to have that open dialogue and to improve communication strategies. So blame it on someone that or something that you read, and then you can ask them, hey, honey, can we take 15 minutes to implement something that I read about today? It was an article that provided information on how to do these 5 things that are supposed to help us feel more connected. And if that sounds like something you're interested in, can we pick a time each week to go ahead and do this and implement this in our weekly routine and see how they respond?
Awesome, wonderful. And then a registrant or attendee asked, are there any local MBSR classes in San Diego?
Yes, absolutely. I actually got certified in, if you're talking about the mindfulness stress reduction program at UCSD. They offer a really, really in-depth good one that I highly recommend to everyone. Every trainer there is really, really well versed in all of the modalities that teach you how to reduce your stress. So again, if you're looking at the mindfulness stress reduction programs, UCSD hosts one. It's not just one, they host them all throughout the year, every couple months.
Great. And then you touched on this a little bit, but everyone's, has their own different, if they have to go back into the office, everyone is going to be at different stages and how apt and available and how much they want to go back. So actually I was talking to some colleagues about this today is probably about 30% of people are feeling like, yes, I want to be back in the office. 30 or 33 are probably feeling a little apprehensive, but kind of will do whatever is asked of them. And then the other 33 are probably saying, hey, I really don't feel comfortable with this, or it's going to be a big change. So how, as people who are in management positions, how do they field all of those different worries and all of those different reactions, and while trying to be helpful to each of their employees on an individual basis, realize that at some point we're going to have to operate as close to, as similar to what we were operating at the beginning of the pandemic?
Yeah, I think the most important thing to do there, and a lot of my clients have done this, is get in touch with what you do value. That's what I was saying earlier. This pandemic has made us recognize what we thought was important maybe isn't. So maybe the opposite has occurred where you realize, wow, I value my time. I value my family time. I value my me time. I need to work at a company that also will allow that flexibility and for me to value myself in this new way. It has actually taught people to look for other jobs elsewhere or transition into other careers because they've realized just how much they value and just how much they find meaning in family or other priorities that they didn't before. I hope that helps.
Yes, that did help. Thank you. And then when it comes to socialization, if I can
Mm-hmm.
say that correctly,
I don't even know how to say it anymore. Look at us.
I
I
know what I'm so anxious even saying the word.
hear
But
you.
people. So what's interesting, and I might just provide some input on my own self. I work with alumni all over the country, and so I basically host a bunch of different events and engagement events all over the country, most every single year. Well, because of COVID, it's been a big change to go from seeing people all the time to not seeing anyone. And not even seeing people all the time, but really seeing a lot of different people, to now trying to figure out what does that look like as we're moving back in. So I, have been curious as to see how I'm going to be in larger groups, in larger crowds, and how I'm going to be effective at my job. So that's just work, but that's not for fun either. So there's people that went from being super social to not so much, and vice versa, being
Mhm.
introverted and maybe needing that new change as they get back in out there. So how would you recommend that people talk to friends or loved ones who might not be used to the new you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's a formula slash a script for how to talk to people when you're making changes. And just to like give a synopsis of what that looks like, you confront them with exactly what you're doing. So you share that with them, you express to them, and you say, now that the pandemic, is coming to a close, I've recognized things about myself, and here are some of them that I've recognized, and here are some things that I'm improving on or working to improve on, and this is how I'm doing it. Or here's things that I'm not comfortable with yet, but I used to be very comfortable with. If you know me, you know that about me. I'm very social typically. However, I'm having a little bit of uncomfortability easing back in, and you tell them, please, I'd like for you to respect my boundaries, to respect my new comfortability levels and whatever those are. And again, use details to describe. I feel comfortable going to here, but not so comfortable going here. I feel comfortable going there, but if it's larger than X amount of people, then I think I'll have to say no. So you set those boundaries for yourself, but don't just set them for yourself and not tell people. Go ahead and tell your friends or your families or your colleagues, here's some changes that I've made since the pandemic. Here's things that is important. Here's things that are important to know about me now. Here's a newer version of me that I'm still getting used to. So you might have to as well.
That's great. I think it's just the theme of the whole conversation is communication, right? And so you can't just assume that people are going to know how you are changing and adjusting, especially going back, after the pandemic. So letting people know, setting your boundaries, and just being strong with it too. And when it changes, letting people know that change too, because that's
Excellent.
important as well, right?
Absolutely. Excellent point. I have a client who was just the other week telling me, it's my birthday. It's my birthday. Typically, I'm like a birthday queen. I want everyone to be there and I want to do everything and make it the most magical day. And she's like, I don't want that this year. Like, I just want to go to a nice meal, like at sushi, and go home and call it a night. And I was like, so you should do just that. She's like, but everyone expects me to be the life of the party and to be the big birthday girl that has a big birthday bash. And so, what I recommend is reducing that expectation that you're putting on yourself to be what you were. We're all a little different now. And if that takes you, stating that to yourself, do that first, but then also state to your friends, hey, I know you typically know me to be the animal here, the party animal here, and the one that's the life of the party and that typically wants these big bashes. But this time around, this is what I'm feeling and this is what I'd want. And I'd love for whoever wants to come to dinner to be there. Again, expressing and communicating, and like you said, upholding those boundaries and maintaining them.
Great. Well, I think that about wraps up our time. I
Wonderful.
want to take the time to say thank you so much for going through that presentation with us. It was really informative and interesting, and For anyone who is on the call, we will be including Lauren's contact information for you to reach out to her if you have any more follow-up questions. And we will also include the PowerPoint and the reflective questions that Lauren included in her presentation, but then also the thought worksheet as well for you to do on your own time if you choose. So again, Lauren, thank you so much for taking the time. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And like you said, I encourage any of you to reach out to me if you have more questions. I'm happy to discuss or talk about anything that didn't get mentioned today. Total open book. I also am accepting new clients. If you feel comfortable coming to the office, fully vaccinated here. And if you don't, and you would want to reach out and have virtual sessions, please know that I also offer that as well. And I very much appreciate your time. Stay well and stay safe.
Great, thank you. And then to close, for those who are still on the call and then those who will be watching at a later time, here's a list of some of the upcoming events that we have from the Alumni Association in the next month. And so the first two at the top you'll see are because this is a San Diego Torero Club event, we do have a San Diego Torero Club virtual open house on July 8th, and then another one for the North County Club, because we have two in San Diego, coming up on July 27th. So we welcome anyone who is interested in learning more about your respective Torero clubs, what we do every year, and just learn or want to build your community in San Diego. You're more than welcome to join us for that. And then on your screen, you'll also see some other affinity-based programming that we have coming up as well. So once again, we thank you all for taking the time to join us today. For those who are watching at a later time, thank you as well. And we all hope you have a great rest of your night. Take care, everyone.